Okay, and welcome to the December 7th edition of Going Viral News. My name is Jim Dingman. I'm joined on the air with Ken Aaron in California, Alex Stavropoulos and Dennis Goldstein, and Michael Jankowitz here in the East Coast. Let's go through some of the headlines. Today, and we're going to deal with this in greater length in a minute or two, Biden and Putin have made little headway on the Ukraine situation in a virtual summit. There is a report today, and again, we don't know the accuracy of that, the military buildup in the Ukraine is estimated to reach about almost 200,000 troops by January. So let's see what happens with this, and we're going to hear an analysis from Deutsche Welle in a moment. On the domestic front, we have Mark Meadows, no surprise here. He has the former chief of staff of Trump in the White House has refused to cooperate with the January 6th investigation. Again, surprise, surprise. Now, the situation on COVID is sort of mixed messages here. The COVID variant Omicron, whatever the hell you pronounce it as, is supposedly all over the place. And I'm getting the sense, and I'm sure others will comment on this later, there's uncertainty as to what its lethality is. However, of course, we're seeing what people predicted when you have not many people, and particularly in situations where this came from in Africa, where you have places where 2, 3, 5, 6% of the population is vaccinated. All of a sudden you had variants occur, and who knows what kind of other variants are going to occur, even if the reports on this variant is that it's, quote, mild, if you will. But we could have one develop that is not mild and lethal, and that could circumvent the defenses that are flimsy as it is with the vaccination. So we'll stay tuned on that, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later in the show at greater length. We have the trial going on in Chicago of Jeffrey Smollett, and I'm not sure how that's evolved yet. We're going to see how that is taking shape. Chris Cuomo has basically been canned completely. His book is pulled today from by HarperCollins following his dismissal. We have Goldstein. We have all this stuff in the press that essentially are trials that, culture war trials in a way. Gilson Maxwell, a third accuser, has alleged that Epstein associate preyed on her when she was a minor. We have, of course, now logs of Trump going down there, a member of the royal family, etc. So who knows how this is going to plan out. And finally, you have from Siberia to the U.S. West, you have record wildfires spewing record carbon emissions into the atmosphere at this time. And a breaking story is that in France, French police have arrested a man in connection with a Khashoggi killing. So let's see how that evolves. Now, what I'm going to do here first is I'm going to share a discussion here that occurred just a little while ago today on France 24, and this is on the situation in the Ukraine. And this is France 24 discussing the situation in Ukraine and their opinion as to whether war will break out or not. Let's just hear what they have to say.
Invade Ukraine? Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin speaking by video link after more than a month of escalation
in the east of that country and across the Russian border, where troops buildups got NATO allies warning of red lines, harsh sanctions if those Russian troops do indeed cross over. We'll be debriefing that virtual summit and Washington's threat to send more troops to Eastern Europe in case of attack. Eastern Europe, but not Ukraine itself, a member of NATO. And that's where the Kremlin's own red lines start. The Russian president wants the West to recognize that this former Soviet state is off limits to the kind of westernization seen in, say, the Baltic republics. It's not just Vladimir Putin who thinks that. Russians see Ukraine as part of their sphere of influence, kind of like Belarus. We'll ask about that perception and how it may be evolving and what Ukrainians themselves want. How do they feel about Russia? Russia the nation? Russia the culture? What the Ukrainian president himself, a native Russian speaker. 7 years after the Maidan revolution in Kiev and Moscow's annexation of Crimea, are we witnessing the theatrics of a frozen conflict or is it about to get a lot more volatile? Today in the France 24 debate, we're asking about Ukraine's red lines. Joining us from Washington, he was U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine from 2003 to 2006. John Herbst is Senior Director of the Eurasia Center at the Atlantic Council. Thanks for being with us.
Good evening. It's happy to be here.
From Moscow, Alexandra Filipenko, Senior Research Fellow at the Russian Academy of Sciences Institute for U.S. and Canadian Studies. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Former German ambassador to NATO, Joachim Bitterlich, joins us. Welcome back.
Hello.
And Uzbek-born Russian-American journalist Vladislav Davidzon. You are too, our non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council, and the author of From Odessa with Love. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. Well, Ambassador Herbst, let me begin with you. We unfortunately did not have microphones in the room during that discussion, but common sense says that they did broach substance.
I don't have any doubt they broach substance, and I think it's highly likely that the principal subject of discussion was Ukraine and Moscow's threatened major aggression against Ukraine. And I suspect as well that they both said in private pretty much what they've said in public and that their senior aides said in public in the days leading up to this event. Biden warned Putin that, in fact, if he escalates his current aggression in Donbass by sending tens of thousands or 100,000 Russian troops into Ukraine, that the United States and the West will respond with punishing sanctions, increased military assistance to Ukraine, and positioning of more NATO forces on the eastern NATO countries closer to Russia's border. And I suspect Mr. Putin reiterated some of the red lines that have appeared recently in Russian official statements regarding NATO-Ukraine relations and a NATO presence in Ukraine.
Is this video call a good thing? What do you make of it?
Well, to my mind, a result of a demobilization of the major Russian military presence on Ukraine without actual increased aggression is the desired outcome. And I think we may well get there, but we're not going to get there as the result of simply this one summit. But the way to get there is to make sure that Mr. Putin understands that the warnings Biden and others have been sending are real. Because Moscow already loses 1 to 1.5% of its GDP a year as a result of existing sanctions. And the sanctions that we are discussing today would at least double that and probably more. And of course, additional military assistance and repositioning of NATO forces underscores to the Kremlin that an invasion of Ukraine would in fact worsen their security circumstances. And this is, I think, the way to manage this crisis.
All right, we're starting to get statements from that meeting, and I'll read to you as we speak, Alexandra Filipenko. One of them, the White House putting out a statement saying that the U.S. president reiterated, quote, his support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity and called for a de-escalation and a return to diplomacy. Now, these are the usual statements, I suppose. What is really concretely, in your view, the desired outcome wanted by the Kremlin from this meeting?
To be honest, to my mind, I think the Kremlin already got what they wanted. They actually wanted a discussion with the US president one-on-one, a discussion that followed up the discussion between the leaders of United States and China. And for Russia, for Kremlin, for President Putin, it is extremely important to showcase that he is just as an important figure on the international stage as the leader of China. So I guess they already got what they wanted on all the military troops buildup by the Ukrainian border was somehow leading to this meeting. And we know Antony Blinken said that the U.S. support for Ukraine is unwavering. He said it a few times, and also after the meeting between Secretary Blinken and Minister Lavrov. So any escalation by Russia would have serious consequences. We knew that. And I must say that for Russia, for President Putin, it is just extremely important to sit one-on-one, even though it's an online meeting, but we understand that as of now, there are no one-on-one meetings as there used to be. So to my mind, Russia already got what it wanted.
So does that mean we can expect a de-escalation anytime soon?
Hopefully, that's my view, that now when President Putin already showed his, let's say, might, now there would be some kind of an escalation because we've been talking about Cold War 2.0. We've been talking about it for so long. And now I guess that just maybe there will be some strategic arms limitations, some new treaties. And for the United States, it's important to have Russia as a partner in Indo-Pacific region. So talking about intermediate range and shorter range missiles and China. So I hope, cautiously optimistic regarding a de-escalation.
Okay, so let me put it to you, Vladislav Davidson, then, because that's an important point just made there by Alexandra. One of the things the Russians have been keen on is a full wholesale review of sort of the architecture of security in today's world. Would the Biden administration go along with that? And with that, would they be right to go along with a full-scale review of who gets to put troops where, what does military deployment mean, and that sort?
I do think that the Biden administration has made serious mistakes in foreign policy over the last couple of months, which have let us into the situation where the Kremlin thinks that they would be mailable or at least pushable into a kind of review that probably they would not want to if they were...
we agree to disagree on Ukraine, but let's talk about more broadly the architecture of today's, security architecture of today's world.
I think it's obvious, and I published an op-ed, a open letter in the Wall Street Journal 2 days ago saying that the Biden administration has been, let's say, interested in a reset without actually using that word, interested in the way that every American president has tried to get a reset with Moscow when coming to power since Clinton would be the fourth or I think fifth president in a row who would want to try a reset and would probably get his fingers burned in the process. But I do think that this administration has other big targets in mind, and that they would like to see this problem go away. They obviously do not want another foreign policy catastrophe on their watch in less than 6 months, but they would be happy if this situation could be dissolved somehow without them looking weak.
Without them looking weak? Well, there's plenty of muscle flexing that's been going on both sides. Yes, there's the troop buildup on the Russian side, but there's also that military hardware made in the USA that was on full display Monday when Ukraine celebrated Armed Forces Day in places like Kharkiv and the port of Odessa. There you see the parade there. There's also been delivery of 2 U.S. Coast Guard ships to Ukraine. These images from 3 weeks ago, ahead of patrols in the Black Sea by the USS Porter. That's a guided missile destroyer, and the command ship of the U.S. Sixth Fleet, the USS Mount Whitney. Routine patrols, says NATO. They're never routine, says Russia, which sees any such exercises in the Black Sea as a provocation. Joachim Bitterlich, would you say that this isn't that big a deal? Did you agree with what you just heard from Vladislav on how the U.S. views this?
First of all, I think for Moscow, this meeting is of extreme importance. It shows for them the equal footing with Washington, to be considered as an equal partner at, let's call it, world level. And Ukraine is one aspect in this. And I think the Russians, on the one hand, they have been trying, let's say, to set a new agenda concerning Ukraine. And this agenda has been set especially by the Americans in the past, by Bush Jr., offering NATO accession to the Ukraine, I think, a wrong step in my eyes. And this has put us into, let's say, a mission impossible nearly. And now this could be, today's telephone call could be a first step of de-escalation, but only a first step. Others will have to follow.
But
All right. So, is this actually a first step in de-escalation? And Alex, what do you think about all this? I mean, and so this sort of a centrist, sort of realpolitik analysis by these four people about what's going on. Obviously, one does not want to see a war break out. I don't particularly think Putin is interested in a war breaking out. On the other hand, it was interesting to hear that Russian woman talk about mutual interest of the United States in the Pacific with Russia. That I found amusing. I was trying to figure where's that, because they're exercising.
I mean,
they're
if you're saying it's this interest against China, China and Russia are almost entering a formal alliance now.
Yes, exactly. They're exercising. Their fleets are exercising together in the in off
Far East.
Korea.
Yeah.
So anyway, so what do you think about all this?
Well, first it should be noted that, of course, the Atlantic Council guy, that organization is funded by NATO. So, well, which is good because, again, it gives us, knows that he's, giving essentially the House NATO point of view, as paid. But, I think the interesting question is, and well, I'll put it to you guys, is it reasonable for the Russians to want a formal, agreement that NATO will never bring in, the Ukraine? That there are a formal statement that, or agreement, I guess is what they would really want, is that, is that acceptable, you think? Well, both to the U.S. and should it be? Because personally, I think that's quite reasonable, certainly to de-escalate all this. And, well, I'm of the opinion that that's, things will tamp down if they get that, the Russians get that. And that's, they've always wanted us. And I'm of the opinion that what the Russians really have always wanted with this is a neutral Ukraine. I mean, obviously, the best of all worlds, they would, like a Ukraine ally to them. But I think they will settle for a Ukraine that is essentially neutralized, neither part of NATO in the West formally, nor, some kind of, subsidiary state. I mean, they just don't have the power that they had as the Soviet Union to compel the Ukraine to be that way. So I think they will settle for,
They certainly have deployed a lot of troops around the Ukraine. Michael, your comments about this? Mike?
Yeah, just had to unmute. Sorry. Well, first of all, I think it's ironic that all this is going on the 80th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack. Hopefully, there's no analogy between the two. But as per your question, Alex, I mean, Russia would have to guarantee Ukraine's sovereignty. And if you're saying if they agree to remain neutral, fine, but they would have to guarantee Ukraine's sovereignty. I'm not so sure Putin would do that. And if we're going to say that we're not going to put him into NATO. So there has to be a give and take. The United States can't just say we're not going to take him into NATO, and Russia could say, good, then we won't invade them now. There has to be mutual guarantee. So I don't know, maybe that's what they're working on at present. I do know that people in Ukraine, because I've spoken to some people who have come from Ukraine recently, and they are very concerned about this, but they believe that Ukraine is much more prepared than it was in the past. So I don't know. I don't know if even if Russia, if Putin decides to pull something, they may not need all that much. I mean, yes, sanctions, et cetera, but they may not need as much support from the United States or allied countries as they would have in the past. But I think that as far as the negotiations, if all Putin is worried about is Ukraine getting into NATO, then he should be willing to make the deal. But the question is that his only concern with Ukraine?
All right. Well, I'll read a comment by the Latvian foreign minister that just came out. He's saying that NATO has to prepare a swift reprisal package against Russia, including U.S. troops and Patriot missiles stationed in the Baltics, the cutting off of Russia from the SWIFT banking payment system, and reinstated sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. Remember, we've been talking on this show about the politics of the Nord Stream gas line over the past several weeks. But, let's bring Dennis in. Dennis, your comments about all this. You have to unmute, Dennis. Well, while Dennis is unmuting, Kenny, your comments. What do you think about this, Dennis? Excuse me, Ken.
Yeah, okay, fine. Yes, just take belligerence and put it in the cabinet behind the Kansas soup. Forget about it. We should be cooperative with other mega nations. Russia's really not just a country because it has all its satellites. Not no longer the USSR, but they're still spheres of influence, and we should be cooperative. I think a good gesture would be for Russia and the United States to jointly create a Disneyland in Ukraine and work on it as partners. We should be working together, not just fighting with each other all the time. But if we had a joint project, like if they get their pipeline, the Nord Stream pipeline, it may not politically be good for American capitalists or people who have shares in Mobil Oil or whatever, but it makes them more cooperative with countries in Europe because they're providing energy. So, that kind of a thing dissuades conflicts of war and waste. And if we could just be more cooperative, maybe we could proceed on reestablishing our nuclear arms treaties and exchanging ballets for basketball and so forth. We should be operating on a more friendly basis. We're still with a strong hand, but I think the analysis is correct. They're just they're doing this for political purposes to get leverage, and we should acknowledge it, not conflate it into a conflict.
All right, Dennis, are you unmuted yet? Dennis?
Yeah, Dennis, you got to unmute.
All right.
Unless you don't want to comment on this.
All right. Well, anyway. Now let's talk about something else in Europe that's happening. This is the Angela Merkel is now off the scene, and this is Al Jazeera English talking about
16 years leading her country and Europe. So what's next, and how will her success
take on the many challenges facing Germany and the EU? This is Inside Story.
Jim, could you go back to the other audio configuration?
Welcome to the program. I'm Hazem Seeker. For 16 years, Angela Merkel
steered Germany through economic meltdowns, refugee crises, and most recently, a global pandemic. But her time as Chancellor has come to an end. Olaf Scholz now takes over and will run Europe's biggest economy. He says his three-party coalition government will focus on working with democracies around the world, including the US, and he's promised to strengthen the European Union. But Germany's incoming leader faces a number of challenges: rising COVID-19 infections, climate change, and tensions with Russia and China. We'll bring in our guests in a moment, but first, Dominic Kane takes a look at Angela Merkel's legacy.
Four times Angela Merkel led her party into a general election. 4 times she won that election, and using a leadership style based firmly in the political centre. When the Berlin Wall fell, Chancellor Helmut Kohl brought her into government where she thrived. And when a scandal engulfed him, she engineered his departure with a ruthlessness which saw her first become party leader and then Chancellor in 2005.
She was underestimated by her rivals. The rivals talked about the way and the means they would come to power, but Merkel followed the logic of party politics: get power, keep power, and get your opponents and rivals away.
The ensuing EU debt crisis propelled her onto the international stage, where her star rose as she helped broker bailouts for Europe's ailing economies and cemented her position as a German leader the world's presidents and prime ministers wanted to be seen with. But it was her handling of another crisis which would shake people's faith in her. When refugees from Syria's civil war began arriving on Europe's doorstep, she opened Germany's borders. More than 1 million came. Increasing numbers of senior colleagues in her own party openly disagreed with her policy. Her poll ratings suffered and the far-right populist anti-immigrant Alternative for Germany party thrived. Many wondered if Merkel was becoming a lame duck. But then came the coronavirus. And as infection and mortality rates rose across Europe, so did Merkel's resolve.
Europe's economy is badly shaken. Fundamental human rights have had to be temporarily massively restricted to an extent unprecedented for our democracies. These are decisions that are among the most difficult in my term as Chancellor.
Her pragmatism this time meant agreeing vast grants to ailing European economies.
She was brilliant in managing through all the crises, but again, not in a very visionary way. There's hardly a project I could link to Angela Merkel saying, okay, this is where she actually implemented whatever topic we're discussing, actually a great idea. So it's much more that she managed to get through all these crises.
But COVID was the crisis she couldn't manage her way through alone. In her last days as Chancellor, the numbers of daily cases hit record highs. Now she had to give way to the incoming government leaders who vetoed her proposed lockdown. And as the new parliament deliberates, she is just a spectator, looking on as the man who replaces her does so, having styled himself as a male Merkel. Dominic Kane, Al Jazeera, Berlin.
All right, so that's you're listening to Going Wild, that news. My name is Jim Dingman. That was a brief piece on Angela Merkel departing. And Alex, your comments about Angela Merkel.
Well, again, she's been there an awfully long time, and I never was a huge fan of hers. But in some ways, she did a pretty good job of, in a centrist manner, managing the EU and Germany's place within it. On the other hand, like a foreign policy, just as subservient to the U.S. as, her predecessors. But I think a more interesting thing, obviously, is not in the piece, is to talk about the new government that's going to be coming in, which is a coalition of the Socialist Party, Deutschland, the Free Democratic Party, and the Green Party. That's, again, a very interesting confluence because, the Socialists are, of course, center-left, the Greens are environmentalist, and the Free Democrats are basically libertarian. So it's a bit of a really interesting, coalition. And so there have been kind of lots of wheeling and dealing of, for example, the Free Democrats are going to have the portfolio essentially of like the economy and a good number of, ministers in that. But again, the Greens are going to get control of the environmental, sector of the government. And of course, the Socialists who have the most seats are going to, their leader is going to be the new chancellor, and of course they're going to get the most important ministries. So it'll be interesting to see again if that marks a big. It'll be question is this going to mark a big change from Germany under Merkel, or and obviously they have a lot of issues to deal with again. What's going on in Eastern Europe, and things like Nord Stream 2. That still have to be resolved. So that's a big thing.
You're listening to Going Wild, News, the December 7th edition. My name is Jim Dingman. We've been talking about the situation in Ukraine, and now we're talking about Angela Merkel departing from the scene politically. And I'm joined in California with Ken Aaron, and in New York with Alex Stavropoulos, Dennis Goldstein, and Michael Jankowitz. Dennis, are you able to unmute right now? Dennis? All right. Kenny, your comments about this before we move on to other stories. You got to unmute. You got it. We're not hearing you.
You got to mute, Ken.
I'm unmuted, and I'm glad I have this opportunity to say I don't know anything about Angela Merkel.
Okay, cool. Okay, fine. Michael, I'm sure you have something to say about Angela Merkel. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I always liked her. It doesn't mean I agreed with everything she did. First of all, she was a scientist, and that brought a much needed perspective to the political scene. And also, she was a humanist. She was, I don't know if you could say a humanitarian per se, but there was a lot of.
Yeah. She brought in 1 million refugees from Syria. I mean, that was like an amazing thing she did.
She was somebody of empathy, and I mean that's vitally important today.
Yeah.
I mean, in those senses, I'm sorry to see her go, because I don't know. I mean, she had a balance between pragmatism and idealism, especially when it comes to humanistic things. But she veered towards humanism. And I think one thing we forget is that one photograph that will probably, on an international sense, certainly in the United States, will be a lasting legacy, is the photograph of her leaning into that smug, childish-looking Donald Trump, confronting him over that desk, which, in a real leadership position as far as the EU. And I think that thing of her confronting this numbskull was probably, that may be, that photograph, as far as her photographic legacy, may be her prime one, at least on an international sense, certainly in this country.
Right. Okay. Well, let's move on. Now, I gather Ken and Alex have stories they want to do, so why don't you, who's going to go first? Kenny?
No, go ahead, Alex. Pull one up.
Okay. All right. So let's start with one that's too bad Gail isn't here, because she'd probably be interested in this, since it's an art history. Well, a very ancient art history, which is the return of some looted art, again, very famous looted art, to Iraq again, after it was stolen, not in the second Gulf War, but back in '91, the first Gulf War. So here we go. This is Al Jazeera, of course.
It's known as the Gilgamesh Dream Tablets.
Oh wait, sorry, forgot to share screen. It's been a while. Give me a sec. Oh. Yeah. What is in it? Oh. All right, now let's do it right.
It's known as the Gilgamesh Dream Tablets, an artifact made of clay with an engraved fragment of the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the world's oldest known religious texts. It was stolen from an Iraqi museum in 1991 and sent to the United States. Now it's back, along with the world's attention. In a rare ceremony, U.S. Embassy officials in Baghdad handed the precious relic to Iraqi authorities.
The Gilgamesh tablet is a clay tablet dating back more than 3,500 years. It has Sumerian engravings on it. Our embassy in Washington received it from the Holy Bible Museum.
The text on this tablet is 1,000 years older than Homer's poems and tells the story of a legendary hero named Gilgamesh, who is said to have ruled Mesopotamia some 2,000 years before the Christian era. He was elevated in subsequent Sumerian mythology as a god. In 1991, during the First Gulf War, 9 of Iraq's regional museums were looted. up to 4,000 items were stolen or destroyed, including some that were thousands of years old, like the Gilgamesh tablet. It was bought by a US-based Christian arts and crafts retailer in 2014 for display in its Museum of Biblical Artifacts, which was later seized by the US Department of Justice. According to the UN's cultural agency UNESCO, it entered the US in 2007. Iraqi authorities say they are happy to have it back now.
This tablet is laden with deep symbolism in two respects: its own intrinsic value, and then in what it means to retrieve it with all the efforts that have been deployed by the government in this regard. It's a message to all those who smuggled our artifacts and auctioned them. They should know that we'll end up retrieving what they had stolen.
Iraqis may appreciate the US initiative to help return their lost artifacts, but they also say America's invasion of Iraq in 1991 and in 2003 led to the biggest disasters for the nation's ancient heritage. An estimated 15,000 artifacts were looted from the Baghdad Museum and smuggled out of the country. Iraqis say the US bears full responsibility for what happened and needs to do more to help them retrieve what they lost. Mohammed Van, Al Jazeera.
Okay, one tip we want.
Okay. So obviously that's, well, interesting. And they don't say it in the piece, but it's actually the people who, it was Hobby Lobby that bought the tablet for this Museum of the Bible. And when they bought it, Homeland Security got interested in it because essentially they couldn't prove, it's, what's the word in art is?
Authenticity.
Provenance. They couldn't prove, where, and then I guess the Rockies must have said, yeah, this is stolen from that museum in 1991. And, which means it probably was almost certainly stolen by an American soldier, because only the Americans and the British operated in Iraq. All the other, the Egyptians, Saudis, and Syrians, and other, allied forces who only fought in Kuwait. So by elimination, it would have, and I don't think the British were anywhere near any major cities and museums. So of course, I was trying to find out which museum so I could maybe figure out which American division probably looted it. But they don't. No article I could find mentioned which museum it was exactly. They say regional museum, so they don't say where. So you can't figure out again where it would have been. But yeah, of course, this is yet another case. We had some of these pieces before from me and Gail, because obviously the issue of looted art is of interest, and
Did they show the art?
Well, again, if you look up the articles, that they will give, it's the so-called dream tablet that describes certain dreams that Gilgamesh has, and of course, I'm sure we can all remember reading the Epic of Gilgamesh. Although obviously, again, there are different versions of it, so I don't know which. But again, this is there are basically different references again to different dreams that Gilgamesh is having about again, as they said, he's was based on a real guy who was probably a ruler of one of the city-states.
Alex, we have Ms. Hara now to comment about this.
Sure. Oh, yeah?
Hi.
Hey, Gail.
Is it the Museum of the Bible that owned it? Because that guy...
Yeah. Again, Hobby Lobby purchased it.
This is very old news, Alex. That guy has to return everything.
Oh, right.
This has been going on at least a year. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, he doesn't know anything about provenance. He just was sold by, crooked, weird deals for, Iraqi, I don't know, some criminals sold him all this crap because he started.
Right, because he's an idiot, basically.
Some bunch of evangelists, the Museum of the Bible.
Right.
Anyway, that's not the big story that I know of today. The big
okay. Well, what's your story?
Related.
Okay.
Is, I think it's the DA of New York, I'm pretty sure, has issued a decree, or Michael Steinhardt. Do you know who that is?
No.
Big time, major antiquities collector in New York. He's kind of, I don't Goldman Sachs, but something like that. Really major gazillionaire in the investment world. And he bought things that were fabulous, not a bunch of junk, including the Sevso silver plates that were on loan or gifts, one or the other, to the Metropolitan Museum on the main floor when you walk in on the right, in those galleries with all the medieval and stuff. These beautiful, huge silver plates, and there were some others as well, but they go back to this thing called the Sevso Treasury. I forget, Sevso somewhere in, I don't know, Croatia or somewhere like that. Anyway, he had to return today something like 1,800 or 180, maybe it was 180.
Wow.
Antiquities because of Cyrus Vance. But I mean, this guy was spending major dough. This was not a little copy of the Epic of Gilgamesh. This is really a big deal, and it's the first time ever, at least as far as Art News was reporting, it's the first time ever that a collector or someone who buys works of has been forbidden to buy another work of art.
Really?
Ever.
Forbidden how? By the federal government?
He is not allowed, according to, or something like that. You can read Art News anyway. It's in there, and it's probably going to be in the... But the guy is notorious, but he had brilliant taste. He bought fantastic things, especially these
Any good Italian art in there?
Well, it's all antiquities. Antiquities, freak. And the best of the best was offered to him because
stealing from me. Wow, my ancestors.
Probably lives.
So if when they make the movie, who do you think should play his part? It's not going to be Cary Grant or even Bronson. Who do we have that can play the part of a sophisticated art collector who's operating spuriously?
Well, Pierce Brosnan used to do a lot of
Yeah,
that.
Pierce Brosnan, that's right. We don't have him.
With a British accent, of course.
Yeah.
But he's real, he's a big fat Wall Street slob. Who,
okay.
Who, clearly, well, at least he did something with all that money.
Right. I guess, I can't remember his name now. The guy who was on Taxi. That's the guy who should do it, right?
Little correction there, Alex. Pierce Brosnan is Irish.
Oh, there we go.
Right.
We forgive you, Alex.
Hey,
okay.
But he's Irish nationality or British? His British citizenship, doesn't he?
Well, he probably has both by this time, but he's Irish. He's from Ireland.
But and not Northern Ireland, then, right?
No. However, as 99% of all actors from Ireland can do, he can easily.
Right.
I mean.
Well, there you go. So, Gail, are you personally upset about that? The thing with his collecting the art, and he's hiding it in his own. He's not sharing it with museums.
That's not true. He was giving all these loans and probably gifts to the Met.
Oh,
and is that how they found him out, Gail?
This isn't some jerk in a Bible museum. This was this guy. I mean, the only thing I know about for sure that I remember seeing personally were as I said, this Sevso treasury, and this goes back to probably, I don't know, at least 10, maybe 20 years. And they were on view at the Met for a long time. They were huge. You probably saw them, some of you.
Yeah, maybe.
Silver plates about maybe 3, 4 feet in diameter, maybe 3 feet in diameter, that were all embossed with images of the story of King David.
Wait, these are Byzantine silver plates, is that right, Gail?
They're Sevso, so I don't know. They're maybe 5th century, something like that. But maybe 3rd century. But
I think that is, yeah. I think it's a famous David Psalter.
SEVSO is the treasury name.
I definitely see them because they used to be in the Byzantine exhibit.
Well, they were in that hallway there, and those were his. I don't think he owned all of them, but he had some of them. But he was the go-to collector if you had some fantastic thing.
Uh-huh.
London antiquities dealers would.
Right, and now you can't sell to him. So probably a bunch of not curators, brokers are probably very disappointed.
How did you spell the name of the plates? S-E what?
S-E Victor S-O. I mean, that's anglicized. I don't know what it is in Serbian.
Oh, there we go. Here's one that was in auction.
It up, Ken?
Yeah, I'm going to try. Here we go. Let me see. I'll try. I got a plate. Let's see if I can do it. Basic. And we go to the screen. There it is. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. So those are not the ones I'm thinking of. Yeah,
well, but there were related ones he probably owned.
Yeah.
What was the date of this? Does it say? I mean, somebody dated it. It may be like 2nd century BC. I don't know.
Okay, so yeah.
That's the
Roman.
Right.
Let's see. Here we go. 14 Roman treasures on view.
You're not subscribed, Ken, so they won't.
They're so pretty.
Or you're not logged in to if you have a I have a New York Times account, so actually I can get it.
Okay, go ahead.
Give me a second.
Let's trace this down. Let's see if there's another one. Here's another.
So the title is what you said, 14?
Oh, look at the whole collection here. Here's the whole collection.
14.
You see it?
Now, he didn't have the whole thing. I think it's in other museums. Some of it may be in the British Museum. I just don't remember the details.
Okay, I can put it up. Ken, you want to stop share screen and I'll put up the...
Yeah, I will stop sharing as soon as I get this. There we go. Now you can do it.
I guess there's a reason I got a PhD. I feel better now.
You can give us your...
If you're interested. That's
here.
Nothing.
You're trying to find out where they came from, huh? The year?
Some of it in the Getty. I don't know. I don't know why I even know.
Oh, here, there's a court case. Hungarian and Croatian claims to it. Wow. And the Lebanese government. Jeez. So it's like everybody's in. Oh, they mentioned here 10 were offered to the Getty, Gail.
There you go.
Back in 83, it said.
And I came right after that. My grant was 84.5 to my dissertation grant. So.
Okay. It says here, it's purportedly sold by a Lebanese-born art dealer called Halim Korban to Peter Wilson, a former chairman of Sotheby's.
That's right.
2 years later, Mr. Wilson and a London lawyer, Peter Mimpris, persuaded Northampton to invest in the venture, and 4 more works were offered. Again, that's when they offered 10 to the Getty. Mr. Wilson died, I guess it was 84. And then the lawyer, Lord Northampton bought 4 more pieces, so that's how it became 14, entirely owned by Lord Northampton, exhibited in New York in 90. They were going to do a Sotheby's auction, but the Lebanese government got an injunction barring them from being removed from New York, and then, a whole bunch of lawsuits happened again. Now, the Lebanese, the Hungarians, the Croatians. Okay, so the New York State Supreme Court, ruled them to be without merit, and so he was able to get Lord Northampton got them back. Oh, and then he charged his lawyer with conspiracy to defraud.
Right.
And we supposedly won $28 million from that.
So did you figure out what the date of the silverware is?
Let's see. Going back to the beginning of the article, it should.
1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century.
Between 350, 450. So so say
Bingo.
4th to 5th. Yeah.
4th to
5th. 22-pound
that's...
hunting plate. May these, O Sevso, yours for many ages be small vessels, fit to serve your offspring worthily. Is the, I guess in Latin, yeah. So it is Roman.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Thank you, Gail. That's great.
That's a good story. Yeah.
I have a story about. What do I have a story? I have I had an interest. Oh, New York. There's a big thing about New York. Let me get this story. 1 second. I just have to find it. Maybe it's in here. Here it is. 1 second. I don't know. I'm surprised you guys didn't bring this up. Let me just turn off the ad. And I will start the story. And I go back here and share the screen. Whoops. There we go. Do you hear it?
No.
You hear it now,
No
right?
sound. Wait.
Before you start this piece, Ken, put a little. I had to go get a COVID test today.
Yeah.
And I came across people in front of Mount Sinai cursing de Blasio out over what you're going to show here.
Okay.
A little schmagegi guy was sitting there saying, "I hate that son of a bitch.
I'll kill him."
It was just too much. But let's hear what you got to say.
Okay.
Ken, we're not hearing it all.
You're not hearing it?
At all.
At all. Okay. 1 second.
So it's not sharing sound or whatever.
Oh, everything is full. Oh, not sharing sound. Okay, 1 second. I know what to do there. Yeah, right. There we go. You got to navigate through this. Okay, let's try it again.
The vaccine mandate is about to get a lot tougher here in New York City.
Yeah, now we can hear it.
The mandate being expanded to include all private sector workers and children between the ages of 5 and 11. Now, Mayor Bill de Blasio.
What happened?
The mandate.
I see.
Municipal workers already have to be vaccinated.
Wait.
Okay, I got it. I got you.
Had not 1 but 2 doses of the vaccine. Now, this measure is going to cover more than 180,000 companies, and it doesn't stop there. From December 14th, children aged 5 to 11 are also going to have to show proof of 1 shot for indoor dining and for after-school activities like sports, orchestra, and dance. Kids of that age group only became eligible for the vaccine in early November, and only 19% of children in that group have already had their shot, according to data from New York's health department. Now, de Blasio said that he made this decision due to the emergence of the new variant and the increased speed that the virus is spreading due to the cold weather moving people to do more indoor activities, and as the holiday season approaches and people gather indoors with family and friends. New York City has lost 34,000 people now to COVID, and Omicron cases have been confirmed in at least 15 US states and several here in New York State. Now, de Blasio described this mandate as a preemptive strike to do something to stop the further growth of COVID in New York City.
Desktop as a Service, DaaS for short, delivers a unified, centrally managed computing environment to users on almost...
That's the end.
That's the end of it, yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm glad I already got vaccinated. And actually, I'm going to go
But I mean,
get my 3rd dose.
Does anybody have? Did you get your booster?
I'm going tomorrow for it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's the one that'll kill you. So anyhow.
Oh, jeez.
Well, I think it's kind of like, I've heard, there's a lot of buzz on the internet that for children from 2 to, what is it, 2 to 12? No, 12 to, no, it's 5 to 12. They're going to inoculate people from 5 to 11, okay. That the chances of a reaction to the shot, a bad reaction, what they call vaccine, VAERS, a bad reaction to the shot, or death, is higher than their chance of getting a bad reaction from the virus. So why the hell are they vaccinating them? Except, I don't know. Doesn't don't
pharmaceutical corporations.
Well, but don't the pharmaceutical they get paid? They get
Oh,
paid
they get
once
paid, yeah.
when they deliver it. Even if it goes stale on the shelf and they have to throw it out, I'm sure Moderna and Pfizer got their money. So what do they care? So what is the point of the vaccinating these kids? Is it just
Well,
stupidity?
then you have to give them the third dose eventually, and so on. So this is a treadmill, or at least that's the argument I've heard here.
It's kind of like crazy. Or on the other hand, all right, some kids or some states want to do it, but why mandate it all over the place? Force it everywhere.
Well, Ken, first of all, this is ridiculous. Because basically, when we were kids, we had polio shots. We had all these vaccinations, and everybody is acting like it's like somebody's taking a knee and taking it into your balls and doing it again because they're forcing you to get a vaccination. It's ridiculous. I mean,
Right.
I would have distrusted the vaccine if Trump had been able to successfully implement it before the election.
Right. That's a good logical reason. That makes sense.
In fact, Biden said you shouldn't trust Trump's
Don't
vaccine
trust Trump.
back
That's
in the
a good way to make a decision. Go on the dictates of who's marketing it.
I wouldn't have trusted him with a 10-foot pole.
Well, has Gary Null endorsed it? That's
well,
my
we'll have to
man.
ask Dennis.
What about Alex
so-
Jones? Does Alex Jones like it? What about George
No,
Clooney?
Alex
Does he
Jones
like it?
says this is tyranny. I'm guessing.
Michael's on the same page as I am on this issue. But let's bring Dennis in because I know Dennis isn't on the same page. Dennis, you got to unmute, man.
No, he is unmuted. So.
Okay, go
I'm
on.
unmuted.
Yeah.
I'm unmuted.
Okay, so give us your opinion, Dennis, on this.
What is this that you're
The mandate for requiring workers and school students to get vaccinated.
The mayor of New York, Dr. Bubblehead. He says everybody's got to get it.
On his way out, I guess
well,
he's doing this. Yeah.
I don't favor it. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Why can't you suffer the slings of outrageous fortune? All the dissent
Mike,
for being
Mike
an
has been weighed in.
anti-vaxxer.
So, Mike, do you have anything to add?
Because I've heard everything about
go on,
Dr. Fauci.
Yeah.
He's one of the big liars of all time.
Dennis, did you Did you read any of the RFK Jr. book on Fauci yet?
No, I haven't, but I've been listening to Gary Null.
Okay, so he's probably quoting the book, right? Yeah, I've heard it has some pretty nasty stuff about him in there.
Well, what did he say about Fauci?
Well, he goes back to the AIDS crisis and a bunch of stuff that blaming Fauci for.
Yeah, well, the AIDS crisis was a tragedy.
Yeah.
Well, I think some of the ACT UP people got more sympathetic to Fauci, like Larry Kramer, who apparently ate his guts for quite a while.
Was the medication HIV or something like that?
Yeah, the cocktail that they.
Right, that cocktail killed a lot of people.
Mm.
Yeah. All right, but Mike hasn't.
Mike, come on, come out of the closet.
Okay, Nokia.
Jim's right when he says we're kind of on the same page on this. First of all, there's a lot of bullshit going on out there, and everybody's quoting and saying, well, the vaccine does this and the vaccine doesn't do this. I mean, there's just bullshit going out there. And somebody, if you really want to find out what it's all about, you're just going to have to do some hard legwork type of investigation. Go in, do it yourself, and find out the true science of it. Not the bullshit and the bullshit science about it, which means people are saying, oh, the vaccines cause this and the vaccines cause that. You can sit there and on Yahoo News and get opinions from supposed scientists or one doctor in the middle of Oshkosh who says, oh, these vaccines will kill you. No, look, we've been getting vaccinated for, since the Second World War. Kids have been getting vaccinated since the Second World War. And the fact is, this is just another vaccination when it comes to that. And everybody talking about their freedom. For Christ's sake, nobody's allowed to yell fire in a crowded theater. Nobody has absolute freedom. And this is one of the reasons why this country is falling apart, because it's insane.
All right.
This is just insanity. And I'll tell you something else about New York. When you're talking about it, I was in a theater today, in which somebody walked in, very nice person, and wanted to get into the theater, and he wasn't vaccinated. And he was
Really? Like, it's like, try your luck, huh?
Well, he wasn't even wearing a mask, bandana, and then he was put off when he was told he couldn't get in. I mean, when I'm riding the subway, it's not a matter of finding a car where everybody's masked, it's finding a car where like 9 out of 10 people are masked. And so putting in this mask mandate, if nobody's enforcing it, I don't know what the bloody hell good it'll do. And I'll tell you something, this new variant, if it's as transmissible as it may be, at least some of the scientists have been saying it may well be, as contagious as it seems to be, from adding up and doing all the research and adding up all the data, then it's going to go through New York like shit for goose. And I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, you could say it's going to go through the red states and everything like that. Yeah, there should be vaccine mandates, et cetera. But there are fake vaccine cards going on out there. And not only that, the vaccines may not be enough. You may need a booster. You may need the booster just to have, the same efficacy against it. And the fact is, people are saying, well, it doesn't cause severe illness or death. In other words, you'll only be in the hospital for a couple of days, and it still protects you against dying. But it doesn't protect people against getting it, and also giving it time to mutate and cause more variants, which means we're going to be in this goddamn mess for the rest of eternity.
Well, that's the bigger thing there is that we haven't vaccinated the rest of the world. That's much more than, we haven't vaccinated ourselves, which is true too. But that's much more to do with not vaccinating Africa.
And vaccinated the rest of the country.
Well, yeah, but we should have made, as we argued for a long time, we should have made.
Wait a second. There's an inconsistency here. Michael, aren't you critical of the average level of intelligence of New Yorkers and of all Americans?
Well,
don't you think they're like sheep and stupid? So what's wrong if some of them kick off? What's the matter? Let's get rid of the stupid ones.
I was talking about people from Los Angeles when I said that.
Okay. So here's all that can happen is people who don't get vaccinated are more likely to die.
No, they're also more likely to spread it.
Okay.
And as long as it spreads, and as long as it has the ability, it has a free reign to mutate.
Yeah.
More variants. Then again, we're going to be playing this game back and forth for the next 20 years.
Yeah, right. Okay, good.
Do it right. Hold it, Ken. We're either going to do something and do it right. I mean, when we went into the Second World War, since the anniversary of Pearl Harbor, and the other allies went in, when we went in finally, the last major power to get into the Second World War. But when we went in, we didn't say, there's a draft, it's an impingement in my personal freedoms. Getting drafted is more of an impingement on your personal freedom than getting a vaccine.
Okay, we understand you're upset about the whole planet. But what I'm saying is the vaccine makes less people on the planet. Isn't that a good thing? There'll be less pollution, less people to complain about, less things to find wrong, less people threatening your life, because everybody's a threat because they're stupid. They could be driving a car and you're walking on the sidewalk and they lose control and hit you. You get run over by some idiot. It's dangerous to go outside.
Good old Malthus here.
Not the vaccine. A little correction.
Let's go to Jim. Come on.
Hold on a second. I want to answer your point there.
Yeah.
Nothing about this, in other words.
If the vaccine is a vaccine, it's a vaccine. You don't have to worry about somebody giving you the virus because you're vaccinated.
Front of your sentence with the middle of mine. How many times are you going to have to use that phrase?
look, the vaccine.
Vaccine.
If you believe depopulating the planet
Yeah.
is a way to cure pollution, well, man, what are you worried about war? Start wars.
Well, that's very destructive to the ecosystem. The worst pollution comes from the military and from war. The most devastating thing to the environment.
Once the war is over, once you have a massive war this time,
Yeah.
the pollution will end shortly afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, come on. You know, the fact of the matter is, it's not a matter, are we sitting here, are we going to try to save ourselves, or are we going to try to kill most of the people on the planet, or let the planet, and not only that, this is destroying civilization as well.
Oh, I thought it was all right, you're right. Let's get inoculated so we can all die from climate change. I've been waiting for that to happen. And I don't want to die from the coronavirus. I want to be here from when the earth melts.
But Ken,
Go ahead.
Can't solve two problems?
What about the asteroids that are going to hit us? What about cosmic bursts that can destroy a whole galaxy?
You go up on the next SpaceX flight and you deal with the asteroids, and the rest of us sane people will sit here and try to deal with the virus and pollution and climate change or something. Fact is, we got a lot of shit on our plate to deal with, and that's the way it is, and we better buckle down and deal with it.
Yeah,
and
but yes. Don't freak out with something that kills less than 1% of the population. Don't freak out and say, "Ooh, forget everything else." Woo! It's 1% of the population, maximum.
1% of the population is 60 million people.
So what? All right. I will write them bereavement cards. Everybody will get a card from me.
Volunteer to be the first one on that list.
Sure.
Okay, good.
The basic cause of the highest risk of dying is people who were born. Everybody dies eventually. You should know that. Everybody dies eventually.
So wait a second. So why not kill kids? I mean, this is ridiculous, Ken, don't you think?
Yeah. Because the kids are not dying. So that's not the situation here.
Die?
No, the kids are not dying. The kids don't die from this virus. Come on.
What do you mean the kids aren't dying from this virus?
They don't die from this virus. The higher incidence of kids committing suicide than dying from this virus.
I haven't seen the last of the variants, Ken, and the way we're going and the way people are dealing with this virus.
Well, whatever we do to conquer this virus, China will come up with another one. Live with it.
Okay, live with it? Well, why didn't you live with Nazism, for Christ's sake?
Well, why don't you live with McCarthyism?
You are going to live for it because we're past the point of controlling it.
That's right. It's endemic now. It's there.
It's endemic. Yeah.
Just give up.
It's a common cold. You have to live.
You have to learn. It's
And you must.
It's going to be like the flu. It's going to be a seasonal thing.
That's right.
Gail, you were saying something.
Oh, Gail, quiet, everybody. Yes, Gail.
Just a little footnote. It is a big honkin' deal if you've got anything else wrong with you, and I didn't die, especially early on in the pandemic. They have tracheotomies, they're on ventilators. Remember the whole ventilator scramble. This is a major onslaught. And a hell of a lot of people died.
Yeah.
So let's not soft pedal it. But I did have the unfortunate experience of sitting near someone 52 years old or 53 years old who has rheumatoid arthritis at Thanksgiving. Oh. And she contracted COVID sometime, and this is anecdotal, but it's fact because I was sitting there. She had increasing trouble breathing at the Thanksgiving table. There were only a few people, so it was pretty obvious. And that night, her oxygen level plummeted to, practically nothing. And, she may be dead. I don't know, but she was 52, and it all really got cranked up with the COVID. I guess it was because of this custom current, I don't want to call it a habit, but the trend of prescribing immunosuppressants So be careful with it.
And Gail, can you explain to
Immunosuppressants. That's all I have.
and Gail, can you explain to Ken where the word quarantine comes from in Italian history?
It's Venetian, right? It's Italian.
Yeah.
I forgot. Quarese.
Quaranta was a 40. You had to, I think after the Black Death, they quarantined you. That's again for 40 days. That's Quaranta, I think
I guess that's where
Italian on an island near Venice before they would let you into the city. Yeah.
Each island has a different point, but there's
so became quarantined.
But of course, we had that island in the East River. What's it called?
Oh, right. Not Plague Island, or wasn't there was something like that?
Where Roosevelt Island is?
No, that where Typhoid Mary was quarantined.
Right. That they would use. Yeah. I think it's where the Potter's Field is now. I think.
Oh no, that's next to City Island. It's not there.
Oh.
It's farther down in the East River.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Roosevelt because there is a big hospital, a big structure.
Right, there is. That's true. Yeah.
It was one end of Roosevelt.
Right. It was the end of Roosevelt. It's to the right when you go over the Queensboro Bridge from Manhattan.
Yeah, to the south, yeah.
Today when I had my COVID test, I had a very irate nurse. The nurse came in and mentioned to me that when she got COVID, she got it because some schmuck friend of her boyfriend had COVID and didn't tell anybody he had it. So she had to take the guy to the emergency room when he got so bad he couldn't breathe. He had to be intubated, right? The guy survived. But, it's not a fucking joke. And, Gary, I like Gary on certain issues. On other issues, I don't agree with him at all. And on this issue, I completely disagree with him because, he's sort of the left-wing anti-vaxxer contingent as opposed to the predominant right-wing anti-vaxxer contingent. Well, no, he's basically attacks Big Pharma. I totally agree with that. But then on the other hand,
developing the vaccine.
But then on the other hand, we're stuck with this capitalist structure we have right now.
I'd like to see Gary produce the vaccine for the entire U.S. population.
Well,
I'd like to see him orchestrate that.
All right,
hey guys,
well, he's got his company,
it's
right?
North Brother Island. It's an uninhabited patch of land located smack dab in the middle of the East River between the Bronx and Rikers. Right. And it was the site of the infamous Riverside Hospital for Quarantinable Diseases.
Right. And you're listening,
Typhoid Mary.
All right, Lynn, you're listening to Going Viral, GoingViral.news. My name is Jim Dingman. This issue, of course, we're going to fight about this forever. The pandemic and the vaccination issue. And I just wanted to throw this up. Playfeld Benjamin had threatened to come on tonight, so eventually he mysteriously will show up at some point because he was so angry about the Ukrainian. He wrote a comment about that. But he mentioned to me that Barton Gellman, who used to be at the New York Times, wrote a piece, and this is from rsn.org. It's sort of a radical news consortium. And what it is basically is he's arguing in the Atlantic that essentially what happened on January 6th was practice. That basically next time, and this is a pretty heavy thing, next time the attempt to overthrow a national election may not qualify as a coup. You will rely more on subversion than violence, although each will have its place. And if the plot succeeds, the ballots cast by American voters will not decide the presidency in 2024. And it's obvious that they're maneuvering to get this kind of situation in place. Everything going on around the country points out to this direction. I had a big fight today with somebody at KPFA. He was complaining about me, he was accusing me of red baiting because I was saying, why should a sectarian left show that has only a couple hundred people be on forever? Maybe there's someone else who could do an equally good job and get more people. But, I'm not too impressed with the ability of the progressive movement in this country right now to counter this crap. And I'm not saying I'm not going to sit there and not fight it, because I will. I will fight it till the end with my last breath. But I am not in the mood to see these kind of things happen because this will mean a different kind of America, a outright fascist America, and America which one will have to resist.
I agree with Jim.
Resist completely. Anyway, all right.
Although I've got to follow up on what Jim just brought up. I think this is in the same realm here. I'm just going to mention it. The New York City Council set to give 800,000 immigrant New Yorkers right to vote this week. We will finally get a voice. So that's, on the progressive side.
But they can only do that in municipal elections, right?
I don't know.
I mean, they can't do that, for national elections. For federal elections, I don't think.
Well, okay.
Or can they? I don't know.
Well, you're New Yorkers. You live
We'd have to ask. I guess we'd have to. Aren't there federal laws that?
Well, no. Let's say they're voting for city councilman, or
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what said of municipal.
Okay, bond issues.
Yeah.
Financial things. Repair of subways.
Well, they pay taxes, Gail. I mean, they are sitting here.
They have to prove they pay taxes if they're going to do that.
They're working.
They do. They have Social Security.
It's the fact that they pay taxes, and unlike what Ken is sitting here talking about, basically letting people die around the world, save humanity.
I'm sorry.
I mean,
No.
really. I mean, no. But what are you?
What about the people who smoke in Japan and China? They smoke too much. They die too much.
Well,
come on.
If they are attempting to become citizens, okay. We have a path to citizenship.
But they're being denied the path to citizenship. Yes, they are by these assholes down in the Congress who prevented Dreamer Act from coming in. But anyway.
But they can apply.
Well, all right.
They can.
All right. Let me.
I love it. Good anger. Disagreement. It's good.
Let's get. Yeah, exactly. A little drama here. All right. Well, let's go back to you guys. Okay. So you all. Okay, maybe it's Kenny's turn to put up a story.
Oh, I have another one. Let me see. Let me just get it. Whoops. It's so hard to navigate this stuff.
About the Malthusian story, because I'm going to have to jump on your ass on that stuff.
Malthusian? Oh, how many people are dying and how many blood? I don't want to go into all the details.
That is Malthusian.
But there's another really hot story here, which is, this was on 60 Minutes. Not this article I'm bringing up here, but 60 Minutes had a woman... I'll just start it from here. Is China capitalist or socialist? And there was a woman on 60 Minutes whose father in China is the head of a big bank. And then she comes to the States and she teaches. I forget which university. But she was saying that we're misreading China if we think that it's capitalist.
Well, I agree with that.
He's starting to turn certain industries national.
Kenny, why don't you put the piece up?
Okay, I'm putting it up. 1 second. Let me get to this. There we go. And I go this. And there it is.
All right.
World market was part of a strategy to develop socialism in the sense that...
Let me go back a little bit. Okay.
The economy. And this is part of the reform and opening up period, is that recognizing that, yes, there were social and economic gains, incredible ones, during the Mao period, but the country was still very poor and extremely isolated. At that point, had been basically sanctioned since its existence, So in terms of rapprochement with the U.S. and opening up to the world market was part of a strategy to develop socialism in the sense that, okay, we're still really behind technologically. Our industrial capacity is still really behind. We need to catch up. In order to do that, we still live in a capitalist world with imperialism. So we need to break the isolation. That means accessing, markets, accessing capital so that you can actually finance projects, and also know-how, So it means sending people all around the world to study and get the knowledge and develop scientists, develop, your technological and information sectors, everything of that, just to basically develop the productive means of the country. And in that period, there was also a reintroduction of a capitalist class. It does exist here, which had been pretty much, became non-existent during the early socialist period. But it was part of the strategic national plan is say, okay, we need to reintroduce it, but how do we reintroduce it is the way. And so the policy was under this, keep the big and let go of the small, meaning that the very strategic sectors remain in the hands of the state in terms of the government. But the smaller areas, smaller sectors, we can begin to reintroduce private capital to stimulate innovation, development, and encourage that. But it was very much a kind of a planned or intentional way of looking at how capitalist elements or capital would be reintroduced. And I would recommend for anyone who wants to learn about this, a book that just came out by 1804 Books in New York called China's Great Road by John Ross, who is a British economist, writes a lot about this period of understanding how the opening up reform period is in line with the development of socialism. And I just want to add two more elements is in helping us understand why we cannot say China is capitalist. One is just land. And we, this great Egyptian Marxist economist, Amir Amin, just a few years before he passed away in 2018, he actually wrote about this question in China. And he kind of put it quite kind of simply and easy to understand is that for him, the fact that the land is still in public hands, it makes it impossible to characterize China as being capitalist because, capitalist society is based on this, this value, this principle of private property and private property as being a commodity. Here, it's still in public hands, even though there is real estate in terms of the use of the land and the leasing of the land. And I would say the kind of third point it's important to recognize why China, you can't characterize China as being capitalist, is that do capitalists dictate politics? And to this, it's a simple no, very much capital is submitted to politics. That's what we're seeing, why the West is freaking out about, oh my God, they're cracking down on capitalists, because they're not in power, There's this interesting, he's a venture capitalist but named Eric Lee, and he gave an actually interesting TED talk about understanding the system of governance here. I would recommend that too. But he once had an interview with RT, and he said, in China, we have capitalists, but not capitalism. I'm a capitalist, but I have no power. It sounds a bit simplistic, but we're seeing this, the way that, big tech, private industry, private tutoring, fintech, all these areas are being controlled is actually saying the government and the CPC has power over capital, kind of how it's developed. And ultimately, capital is submitted to politics.
Okay, and let me just make a comment on that. I didn't pull up the 60 Minutes thing, but they had several shots of, I don't remember his name, the guy who established Alibaba. And he's been cut down a peg, and it's Xi Jinping.
Jack Ma, right?
Yeah, Jack Ma. Xi Jinping, he says, we're just, like the lady was saying, it's just part of our plan to make it socialist. We're not going to, he's according to this woman, Xi Jinping is not really interested. He's interested in the poor and the middle class. He detests the arrogant billionaires who, flaunt it and go around with Jeffrey Epstein or whatever they do. So he's cutting down, and they're grabbing some things and nationalizing them and so forth. And I tried also concurrently looking up what companies in the U.S. are owned by Chinese, what ports are owned by Chinese. It's something that we should monitor. And I'm very I'm a xenophile. I love China. I like it. I'm very impressed with their progress and the general attitude of their people, the degree of cohesion between each other. When you, just as a small comment, when you travel on the train, it's one group. It's like one big family. Not everybody loves everybody, but they all move together in harmony. And it's a lot of people, but they all move together like a wave. So it's a social cohesion. And, they dance at night in the street, line dancing and waltzes and stuff. So it's a very strong community and so forth. Lots of stuff. It's good. It's a great country. And it seems like the Communist Party is doing a good job of taking care of business there for the Chinese. And that's not to excuse any of their atrocious civil rights or human rights violations and or their aggressive attitudes. But that's okay. You get that in the history of all nations, too. We have Abu Ghraib, We currently have mandated vaccines, and so forth. And we currently have cancel culture, a coach who's making 70 million a year just got to take a walk, buddy. We saw these emails you wrote. Don't like them. Goodbye.
Oh, racist or
whatever, whatever he said. I don't want to repeat it here because I don't want to be cancel cultured by YouTube.
Oh, it should be making 70 million a year.
He shouldn't be making.
Neither worth that. Yeah.
Neither the all the football players and the basketball players and the movie stars and so forth. So I don't want to go into all of that. But so China has its flaws. America has its flaws. Everybody has a little. Even Jim Dingman's got some problems.
No, he has very few flaws, Ken.
No, very few. I know, just a few. I think of Jim Dingman. Or what's the name of that guy that Tom Hanks made that movie about the guy who was everywhere all at once?
Forrest Gump.
Yeah, he's the Forrest Gump of the Pacific, and actually much broader than Pacifica. Pacifica is incidental. But he's.
It isn't. It isn't incidental, even though my involvement will increase tomorrow.
But I know. By the way, you have all my sympathy.
Yeah, right. But one of the things I want to say about China.
Yes.
Is, one, there's a really good. I recommend it to all the people who listen, to you guys. The Seeger Center in GW has a
spell that, Jim.
SIGUR. It's a Seeger Center, and it has an ongoing series on China. But what's more interesting is an ongoing series at the Transnational Institute in Amsterdam. And what they're doing is they're having like 4 or 5 scholars talk about, okay, what's daily life like in China? And it's really quite valuable to get a perspective because it gives you a sense, it's like the largest country in the world in terms of population. So obviously you're going to have all these amazing things going on among the populace. And finally they have a whole, Seeger Center is GW, I believe. And then the Transnational Institute is in Amsterdam. And I think they've recorded these events, but there's a really amazing ongoing seminar that started, that was organized by the University of Heidelberg. And it's an international seminar on China. And what they did was they started last year when they had the 100th anniversary of the formation of the Chinese Communist Party. They basically just chronologically went through all the different issues of the rise to power of the Chinese Communist Party. Mm-hmm. And they're up right now to having experts talk about Xi Jinping and all the different aspects of Xi Jinping. Now, the one thing I disagree with is that one of these blogs you discovered, Alex, or
yeah, it's Breakthrough News.
So that's
which is connected to the PSL. Yeah.
All right, so that's sort of an interesting comment. The problem I would throw at her is I'm thinking of the 1 million people in Beijing who basically got thrown out of their homes or forced to leave Beijing at the time of the Olympics. And the whole question of the tiers of how they create workers that essentially are considered irrelevant, and there's no safety net for them. So, quoting a socialist society, like let's say a social democratic society like Norway or Sweden that has a high per capita income, they have safety nets for displaced workers, whereas these poor individuals in China, they're just up the creek without a paddle.
Well,
I
sort of make the argument to that, Jim, that, this is what happens to every country that's developing. We went through, if we go back to the Gilded Age, late 19th century, it was horrific here.
Right.
The argument could be, we're going through that period, and then now we're going to develop again.
All right.
The U.S. did the New Deal to.
All right. One could say during the Great Leap Forward, you could say, okay, when America, because the Great Leap Forward basically failed economically, and 20 million people died as a result of that. Whatever the number is, right?
30,
So
35.
one could argue, okay, what happens when you have the forced industrialization of the Soviet Union and the first and second 5-year plans, which lead to, millions and millions of people killed. Now, in the United States, of course, one could say, well, look at the expansion of the West, the genocide of Native Americans, which was accompanied, companies' mass industrialization after the Civil War, and so these kind of things, and et cetera. But uh, the problem I always have with people who have sort of a blind, unthinking attitude towards a socialist country to think that they can do no wrong is that one could simply point out these things about they're humans in power. They have all the flaws of humans in power. No one's going to sit there and look at Stalin as some patron saint of rectitude. And it's like come on. And like Mao Zedong, the same way. I remember all these guys I knew who were big fans of the Gang of Four in the Revolutionary Communist Party. I remember I would tease them. I said, "Wait, you can't say this because, what's her name? Chang. Who was mad? Was mad?
Jiang Cheng. Yeah.
Jiang Cheng. The
His
actor
wife.
who
Yeah.
produced him in Yan'an doesn't agree with you." And and so you get caught in these situations where you have to defend ridiculous bullshit.
Yeah.
And
No. You don't have to defend it, and just hold the same standard. Oh, this is my thing. You have to be tolerant of other people's mistakes and misbehaviors, and government's mistakes and misbehaviors. Otherwise, you're going to get caught being blamed for your flaws.
Yeah, but your solution is to starve the sons of bitches. So,
no, I just want to point out something. You said 1 million people were dispossessed when they built a dam or they built Beijing or something. 1 million divided by 1.5 billion is 0.06%.
Oh, you sound like me when I'm talking about the market share of a Pacifica station.
It's below zero, right?
They don't get to 0.6.
That's true. That's the thing with Pacifica. And forget about the listeners. Think of the non-listeners.
Well, that's
the people that aren't listening.
Well, it's gonna be quite amusing.
We subsidize.
But the thing about China being socialist or not socialist or capitalist, they have their own blend. I mean, when Deng Xiaoping came into power, that was the key thing that occurred when he sort of opened up and essentially created a situation. The money that came initially was from the local states in China.
Right.
And then, of course, you had the investment of foreign capital, including, I might add, capital from Taiwan.
Yeah, sure.
So that's an interesting aspect of all this going on. I mean,
that's right. Even today, even though China's investing in the West, we still have more money invested in China from the West.
It's also about labels.
We're still higher on the investment. It's about $1 trillion. It's only $1 trillion.
The entire world's been engaged in essentially socialism for the past 2 years to deal with the COVID economic crisis by quantitative easing and
there's money coming out of like
billions of dollars and euros and
spitting out money, right?
Alibaba went up. I mean, they had a great day. Alibaba has had 4 days of success in the stock market as of.
Oh, really?
Oh,
yeah, it's going up.
You have some shares, Ken.
No. But anyway, let Michael or Dennis on this issue of socialism and capitalism in China.
Well, I'm sure Dennis has.
Yeah, you want me to talk?
Yeah,
please.
Yes. According to Samir Amin, in a talk he gave in China on YouTube, he said that China was neither socialist nor capitalist. That's what he said. But then Z, is that how you pronounce it? Z?
Yeah.
G.
Say it again?
G.
Like Gigi.
It's like, yeah.
G. Anyway, G has said that the country has developed unequally.
Yeah.
And the idea that they're now trying to fight against inequality. And that puts them in the direction of socialism, as opposed to the United States, where the GOP is America's fascist party trying to make America fascist. So I think between China and the United States, we're going in the direction of fascism, and they're going in the direction of socialism. It doesn't mean they're going to reach it, and it doesn't mean we're going to reach fascism per se, but that's what's happening in the world. And if you want to know who, I can't even say there's good guys and bad guys. There's just tendencies, and in this country, the people who are progressives and leftists have to get their act together, because we're not fighting the enemy. The enemy is really the GOP and fascism, and we should be fighting them on all fronts, and we should be organized, and we're not organized at all. Oh, well, we're organized somewhat, but we need to organize, and we need to fight back. That is, we don't want fascism to win. And on the other hand, we should move in the direction of equality, and also support China going in that direction too. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Hey, Mike, come on, Mike. Mike, come on, unmute Mike.
Unless he's
Mike,
he's away from his phone.
Mike probably went somewhere else. Anyway,
Oh, that's right. He took off. Okay. I have a very interesting. I know I'm being piggish here, but this is. Well, let's just. You got something you want to throw up there? Because I got MIT says society will collapse in 2040.
All right. Well, yeah.
Well, that's the piece we did already, Ken.
Oh, you did that piece?
That's the one. Again, it goes back to, it was a 1972 report.
Right.
All right,
we did that already.
Okay, great.
A month ago. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
That's
But it's good that they're still. Yeah.
Anyway, I just want to show you this. This is what I was talking about.
Interesting.
Go ahead.
This is these are probably recorded. They're various. Are
you expanded full screen?
Are these Zoom? These are Zoom talks, Jim.
They are. Yeah.
Full screen.
You can ask questions or.
Yeah, you can. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's what's there. Okay.
Where is it? What's the website?
Talk. It's the transnational.
TNI.org.
Sorry.
TNI.org.
Okay.
It's a transnational institute. Not to be confused with the Tricontinental Institute, which is VJ's thing.
So this is where the Zooms are, right? The Zoom conferences?
What days? Yeah.
Zoom conferences. Okay.
So there's one tomorrow.
Yeah, go
if
on.
You can get up that early, 8 o'clock, New York time.
What is it listed under? There's too much stuff here. Programs, transitions. Where do you find it? Under the topics, like corporate power?
Under their webinar stuff.
Webinar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
go on. So you guys have other stories?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alex. Throw something up there.
Okay. Well, I don't know. As hopefully our viewers will know, and the people on the
full screen.
It's of course the 80th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Full screen.
So
please.
best to celebrate by pointing out the U.S. Navy poisoning the people of Hawaii. No, this is a good piece. Again, I think it came out today, so I think it's deliberately timed for Pearl Arbor Day. But
could you make it full screen?
Okay,
there we go.
Yeah,
charming lady. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Abby Martin.
That's Abby. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, she's crying already.
Has just poisoned thousands of people in Hawaii with.
Oh, she has a ring in her nose. Look at that.
Yeah.
Instead of acting to save lives,
she's
engaging in a massive cover-up. This ongoing disaster is the result of the Navy recklessly storing millions of gallons of fuel, literally 100 feet from Oahu's largest drinking water source. This story should be treated as the national scandal it is, but so far it's been largely absent across major media, maybe because the culprit is the beloved U.S. military. Before we get into it,
Watch the man who's been sounding the alarm for years. Hawaii Board of Water Supply Chief Engineer Ernest Delau at a press conference on December 3rd, right after he was forced to shut down the island's essential aquifer.
I think this is a foreshadowing of what could happen to the broader community if we don't do something about the storage of this fuel, over 180 million gallons of diesel and jet fuel, 100 feet above our drinking water aquifer. If we don't do something about eliminating that risk to the water resource. So I think it's time for action now. It is time. We cannot wait any longer. The water resources is precious. It's irreplaceable. It's pure. There is no substitute for pure water, and our lives depend upon it. So I would urge the decision makers and the Navy to take action immediately, to take away this risk from our vital water resources there.
You know, I can't even imagine what was going through Lau's head at that moment, knowing that despite how quickly this current leak is cleaned up, there are already untold amounts of people who could suffer and potentially die from the toxins they've already ingested. Petrochemicals in drinking water are notorious for causing leukemia, miscarriages, and devastating birth defects. We just did an hour-long podcast on this unfolding tragedy, in which you can find many more details about the case linked to in the description below. So this is all happening at the Red Hill Fuel Storage Facility, owned and operated by the Navy, where since World War II, about 200 million gallons of fuel have been stored in the same rusted-through metal tanks, right on top of this precious and irreplaceable water source. Red Hill has always leaked. The classified Navy report in 1982 reported leaks in the fuel lines and regular leaks for 40 years prior. Since then, the Navy's own data has shown constant, regular fuel leakage and consistent toxins in the soil that far exceed Department of Health safety standards. We're talking about almost 80 years of this pollution. Once residents became aware of the once top-secret facility in the 90s, they've been calling to shut it down, because obviously it's insane to continue this. But the Navy's always maintained there's nothing to worry about. They test the water all the time. If there was a problem, well, they'd be sure to let you know. Here's a Navy captain in 2016 responding to all the concerns.
Good morning to you, Captain Ron. Good to be here. Top two questions people are asking. Number one, is our drinking water safe? And number two, will it continue to be safe? Yes, Ron. So easy questions to answer. One, the drinking water is safe. And I know that because we test the drinking water exhaustively once every quarter. And we also have ground monitoring wells near Red Hill, which we test on a monthly basis. So we would know if there was any petroleum in the water, the drinking water is safe. Okay.
It turns out that the Navy detected harmful petrochemicals in the drinking water at least 6 months ago. According to Hawaii paper The Star Advertiser, water samples taken by the Navy at its Red Hill drinking water well showed petroleum contamination in July, August, and September. Some of the samples exceeded the state's threshold for what's considered safe. So what did the Navy do when they found these chemicals back in July? Did they tell residents, pregnant women, even their own troops to stop drinking the water? No. Instead, they actively hid the information and refused to comply with the Hawaii Department of Health on giving them the data. The Navy had been constantly failing health inspections at the facility, leading to hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines from the health department, as well as a lawsuit filed by the Sierra Club in November. The only reason the Navy finally admitted something was even happening is that the water began to smell and taste like gasoline, and people began showing up at the emergency room with chemical burns in their mouths.
Today, Amanda just texted me, and it's about 6 o'clock in the morning Hawaii time, Mr. Chairman, that she went to the Tripler emergency room last night because of a headache and irritation in her mouth and throat, and her doctor diagnosed her with chemical burns in her mouth.
The Navy's response to all of this has been predictable. cover their own asses by any means necessary. Watch this Navy spokesperson lie to the public.
Well, what I would say to that is if you're pregnant, you're concerned, one, obviously drink water that you feel is safe. No evidence to suggest that there's any long-term effects, but
it is completely false that there are no long-term side effects of pregnant women drinking these pollutants. Navy command cannot be trusted. Even head of the Hawaii Sierra Club chapter, Wayne Tanaka, stated in November, "We have lost all trust in the local Navy command." And that was before we knew they'd been covering up poisonous water. We have no idea how many people have been impacted so far, how big this leak is, or how much more pollution is still making its way from Red Hill to the drinking water supply. What we do know is that Biden must declare a state of emergency to help this community, and that the Navy must finally do what Hawaiians have been demanding for decades: shut down Red Hill. It's not like they don't have the money to do what's urgently needed. Move the fuel tanks, relocate the residents, and pay for remediation, cleanup, and lifetime health care for all potential victims. Right now, the Navy is refusing to do any of that, and they're actually saying they need 5 months to fix the leak, and until 2045 to make it totally safe. No matter what happens with this current contamination, this same thing is guaranteed to happen again and again, as long as this totally pointless, decaying facility remains there. We know from the military's horrific legacy of water contamination, from Camp Lejeune to Coldwater Creek, that the standard response is to cover up their pollution as long as possible. And once people start dying and they can't hide it anymore, deny responsibility and health claims by the people they have poisoned. This has happened to so many communities in the US and around the world living near current and former US bases. We cannot let it happen again at Red Hill.
Okay. So obviously, go Navy, right? Yeah, so as she says, this is, and Jim, I'm sure knows about some of these other cases, again, like they mentioned Camp Lejeune, places that are notorious for, again, these kind of,
all I can say is she's not a good American. Look, they actually suspended it today. They actually issued an order today to suspend this. And I'm looking at where this facility is on the island of Oahu. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you have all these people who felt that after the first attack, they should have bombed the hell out of the refineries at the base itself. And they didn't. And so they obviously dispersed all sorts of storage facilities across the island after the attack, because 80 years ago this was set up. Now, the question of polluting people, right on. They have to fight that, absolutely. The Navy has to move that shit. And it's as simple as that. And they actually suspended today. So let's see what the hell happens. I mean, I'm sort of amused to watch this because I'm saying to myself, where is this oil located that this woman's so upset about? And is it indeed where I think it is? And it wasn't. It was actually a pretty built up area. It's near the University of Hawaii on Oahu. So, you actually have to look at the map where it's located. And I'm sure there are other aspects of this located around the island, because the buildup of the island after Pearl Harbor was indeed to have redundant supplies of aviation and naval fuel dispersed all over the place. So, let's see what happens. I mean, it's obviously something that has to be rectified. And, it looks like the community's pretty riled up about it. So they're obviously going to do something about it.
Okay, so who's got this next video up here? Together Awaits. Is that you, Alex?
Oh, yeah. So this is, I don't know if
is this on the same topic? Is it on the same topic?
No. This is
Okay.
about the
Okay,
French
I have a
arresting
comment. I have a
somebody,
comment.
one of the assassins in the Khashoggi case.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, just back on that. It was
Sure.
Abby Hoffman, right?
Abby Martin is
Martin.
Martin.
Much better correspondent than Anna
Abby Hoffman.
than Anna Kasparian.
Oh,
much better.
yeah.
Much better.
No.
So
no, she used to do the RT show Breaking the Set for.
Oh, that's
years.
right.
Yeah,
RT. What she was.
But she's a good journalist. She's a good journalist.
Was she on Al Jazeera too? No.
I mean, just as a reporter.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
she's been doing this.
good.
She's been doing this since Occupy Wall Street. So she started as a reporter then.
Okay, so you go. All right. Anything else?
So yeah, this is interesting again because.
Are we done on this? Is any Dan?
Yeah.
Dennis, you want to come in on this thing about the Navy poisoning people slowly all around the world? Dennis?
Yeah.
Any comment about the Navy? No. Okay. Mike?
Yes.
Dennis has a comment. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Dennis.
Yeah.
I would say the military-industrial complex is the biggest polluter in the world.
Right.
Oh, well, actually, that is true. That is actually true.
And they are a danger to our habitat, which means that
to all life on Earth.
All life on Earth.
Yeah.
Right. That's exactly it. And we have to do something about it, which means that we have to build up an anti-military movement in this country. Big time.
Well, I guess that's what the Russia's doing right now.
China, yeah.
Get rid of the military here.
So
let's go for your thing, Alex. Go ahead, Alex.
So I should put up this longer piece because the show.
Oh yeah. Well, don't show the whole thing. Come on. What is it?
Well, wait. We don't play.
Of the fashion show, or that's a commercial?
No.
We're joined by France 24.
Oh, that murder? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Let's get. All right. Let's give it 5 minutes or something. Whatever.
Well, it's interesting because this has international implications.
It's one guy, a reporter, right? This is the reporter who got cut up.
This
yeah.
request by Turkey that was outstanding for some months now. We were told by the police that basically if you...
In Pakistan, they executed a guy for blasphemy. The people
Right.
did, not the country. The people.
Yeah.
Shit happens.
Oh, that's called a lynching.
Lynching, whatever you want. No, they burned him to death.
Wait, Ken. Let's let him
former
talk.
member of the Saudi Royal Guard, one of the 26 people wanted for Turkey related to the killing of Jamal Khashoggi on the 2nd of October 2018. Another thing is that indeed you are right, there will be of course an extradition procedure launched against this person to send him to Turkey, but he will be presented to a judge in the hours to come in Paris, and he will have an opportunity there to refuse to be extradited, in which case there will be the beginning of a procedure. We'll have to see if he accepts or not to be sent over to Turkey. We're going to have to see whether or not he accepts to be sent over to Turkey, but that extradition proceeding has indeed begun. For more on this, let's cross now to our Turkey correspondent, Jasper Mortimer. Jasper, the last 3 years, Turkey's not sat idle since that murder.
No, in fact, the month after his killing, in October 2018, Turkey asked Interpol to issue red notices. So
That's an arrest warrant or red notice.
At the moment, 20 Saudi officials are standing trial in absentia in Istanbul. Their trial began in July last year, and they include 2 men with the surname Al-Altaibi. One is this person, Khaled Aib, and the other is Badr Lafi Al-Altaibi. Now, the indictment says that 10 of the defendants actually took part in killing al-Khashoggi by suffocation. One of them is al-Otaibi. But from the pressing reports that I've read, we don't know if the indictment says one of the killers was Khaled al-Otaibi or Badr al-Otaibi. I think the key issue here is, will he be extradited? And I think it's highly likely that the Saudis will pull every trick in the French legal book to block his extradition. And secondly, if he does get to Turkey, the Turks will put him on trial. He'll be the only person in the dock. Will he give evidence? And if he gives evidence, what is he going to say? You know, initially, after Khashoggi's killing was announced, the Saudis said they had nothing to do with it, that he had walked out of the consulate and they were looking for him just as the Turks were looking for him. Then the Saudis changed their story and said, yes, he was dead, but he was killed in a rogue operation. And finally, they said it was an operation to persuade him to come back to Saudi Arabia that went wrong, that became rogue, and he was killed by accident.
There's also the timing. Stay with us, Jasper, because I want to first turn to James Andre on this. The timing of this arrest coming just days after the French president was in Saudi Arabia sitting down with the Crown Prince, the first Western leader to do so since Khashoggi's murder.
Absolutely, it's true. Basically, Mohammed bin Salman has been basically punished from the international diplomatic scene for the last 3 years, since 2018. And so, since the killing of Khashoggi, now Jasper was indeed saying that that Mohammed bin Salman had been accused, and he's been accused also by the United States, which in an intelligence report back in February 2021 stated that, according to their intelligence, well, the execution or the killing of Jamal Khashoggi was indeed validated by Mohammed bin Salman. So yes, indeed, this timing is, of course, interesting in any case. It's coming just days after this visit, which was, of course, a very important visit for Mohammed bin Salman, because it was the opportunity for him to make a comeback and to shake hands with a head of an Occidental, Western head of state. For now, Joe Biden, for example, does not take calls from Mohammed bin Salman, though there have been contacts between the administrations. And indeed, it is the first head of state from Western power to meet him. That was just
Okay, so obviously that has a lot of different international implications. I mean, I figured that, the Turkish president Erdogan is looking to, looking to embarrass the Saudis here, but again, having, public witness to essentially excoriate, if they can, basically flip him to, humiliate the real Saudi leader, Mohammed bin Salman, by presenting, all this news about what he did to his own, dissident. And you're muted, Ken, so if you want to say something.
I have to mute myself every once in a while. I can't shut up. No, I mean, I'm just shocked. I'm absolutely shocked. You got a guy who drove a car and killed 6 people and injured 40. You got the U.S. who, did a revenge bombing and it killed somewhere in Afghanistan and killed 20 people and children. You got people dying at the border. You got crap going on all over the country. This is a reporter. He's not an elected official. He's not a religious leader. He's just a goddamn reporter. And you never know when they're telling you the truth or not. So what's the big goddamn deal? So it's just, it's political.
As a journalist, how do you respond to Ken there? That he's just a reporter.
Yeah, he was a reporter. He just came in to get a wedding license, and then he got suffocated and cut up into little teeny bitty pieces.
There you go. Karma. It's got bad karma.
Who knows where they were like better than the mafia. They took the little pieces and put them out somewhere in Turkey and burned them, and they burned his clothes. Oh no, one guy dressed in his clothes.
Right, and pretended to be him for like a day.
Here's a guy who used to be basically aligned with Prince Turkey. He used to be aligned with the head of the
intelligence,
CIA.
Yeah.
CIA. So he was a useful lackey of the royal family. He actually went and traveled and met Osama bin Laden several times in Afghanistan. So, Jamal Khashoggi was sort of an interesting character, and then all of a sudden he decides to be a critic of the royal family.
Yeah.
And that's what did him in.
Right.
And so, like, it is a big deal because, I mean, forget about uh, the freedom of the press with journalists. I mean, first of all, we have a high rising casualty count of journalists anyway in the past 30 years.
Right.
Shoot them down. Oh, you're press? Bam. Let me level that AK-47 at your head and blow you away.
Right.
So that's been going on now increasingly for 30 years. But here's a guy who they decided to not only kill, but kill in a most savage way. So, it is a big deal internationally, this Khashoggi case. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why the Saudis are diplomatically isolated for so long.
Yeah. I have a relevant, related piece to this.
Okay, good.
All right, so let me bring that up. And because it's about Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So let me find it. And, there it is. Here we go. And here comes the sound.
Planning to disrupt the vertical and grid-like trend in a grid of roads and vertical farms and skyscrapers. But what if a different urban perspective was on the horizon? Saudi Arabia is planning to disrupt the vertical and grid-like trend with the line, the backbone of the Neom megalopoly. At a cost of $500 billion, they're touting this 100-mile-long linear city as the most sustainable urban complex in the world, and one with some cutting-edge renewable technologies, like generating fresh water in a desert. But will it work? Let's explore if Neom is a flight of fancy or the future of sustainable cities. I'm Matt Farrell. Welcome to Undecided. Times larger than New York City. Now back in 2017, the Saudi billionaire announced the line would be completed by 2025, but recent estimates predict it's most likely 2030. That's still an aggressive timeline for a megacity that will be 33 times larger than New York City. Now, this project is part of the Saudi Vision 2030 program, whose bottom line is to develop new avenues for the country's economy. So many possible puns with this one. So it's not a coincidence that the prince announced the Neom project in 2017, just a year before the oil price hit a new low, which was 63% lower than the peak in 2012. Saudi Arabia has been heavily reliant on its oil reserve, which is the second largest in the world. But they realized this could pose a risk for the country's future, so instead of oil, they bet on technologies, scientific research, and tourism. So what's special about Neom? Well, the project boasts the Saudi linear city as a revolution in urban living. Saudi Arabia will build the smart...
Neom is the name of it. Neom. You see that on the bottom there?
Some science fiction.
That's the name. Well, it's science fiction, but it's in the tradition of Elon Musk. Let's go to Mars.
The structure in the northwestern Tabuk province, strategically originating at the junction between North Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. The line will be within a 4-hour flight for over 40% of the global population. And besides Saudi Arabia, the line will cross Egypt and Jordan. In fact, the Neom project also includes a construction of a bridge across the Strait of Tiran, connecting Saudi Arabia with Egypt. Expected to host 1 million people, the Neom urban design will feature 3 levels. The top ground layer will be a fully pedestrian area with green parks and 0 cars. Just underneath, they'll build a services area including shops and offices. At the very bottom, the spine will connect the city's modules along the line with AI-driven vehicles, metro, and ultra-high-speed trains. You're supposed to be able to buzz through the whole route within 20 minutes. The project has some crazy flights of fancy, from creating the illusion of a giant artificial moon using drones, to cloud seeding to produce rain. But let's just set those aside and focus on the more meaningful approaches. One of the big goals of Neom's designers will create a renewable oasis. They claim clean energy will produce fresh water from the sea and power the whole infrastructure. Now that all sounds great, but there are some environmental and social impacts to consider. The line will cross Jabal al-Awz, the almond mountain in Arabic. It's one of the most popular tourist sites in Saudi Arabia. The Neom website acknowledges that this area is a challenge for accessibility and will likely be the least populated zone of the whole infrastructure, but the line is already impacting people who live in the area. Saudi forces are trying to deport around 20,000 Al-Hawattat tribe members. I apologize if I mispronounced that name. After the suspicious death of a tribe activist in 2020, human rights organizations called for a UN investigation. On top of all that, is the Neom project even economically viable? Research conducted just after the Neom's official launch reveals some economic challenges. Despite the fancy website, the many advertising videos, and the intention of turning Neom into a free trade zone, some experts point out that the Saudi government will have a hard time attracting private investors. That's because of the lack of information about the city development, excessive bureaucracy, and unclear regulations. Despite the Crown Prince's enthusiasm and his over-the-top presentation, many scientists are skeptical about his dream coming true. Like Mark Laverne, the director of the National Center for Scientific Research, who believes a project like Neom isn't viable from an economical and technological point of view in such a short time. So does that mean Neom is just a public relations strategy or a real project? Well, we'll need to see how things progress down the line, but some of the technologies that Saudi Arabia is trying out could be a huge benefit for sustainability on a global scale. That's why it's worth taking a deeper dive into some of them. So first, let's look at the pros of some of these technologies. And one of the key assets of the line is their advanced transport system. Its underground trains are supposed to be operating at over 300 miles per hour, but are there trains reaching that speed at the moment? There are two options, maglev and hyperloop trains. Last year, the Central Japan Railway Company introduced the L0 series improved superconducting magnetic levitation, or SMAGLEV? SMAGLEV? SMAGLEV. You gotta love acronyms. With a max speed of 310 miles per hour, the SMAGLEVs levitates at 4 inches above the rails. In fact, levitation overcomes the problem of friction between the wheels and the rails, which maximizes the velocity. But what makes it levitate and move forward?
I'm
15% of the.
I'm jumping ahead to the super trains to a very important thing about desalination and some of the numbers they give here.
Desalination plants has increased exponentially over the last 60 years.
Let me
Denser than seawater, hypersaline brine sinks to the bottom. The increase in salt content triggers a drop in oxygen, which harms the marine ecosystem. The bad news is that the global number of reverse osmosis desalination plants has increased exponentially over the last 60 years. And guess who's in the lead? You guessed it, Saudi Arabia with 15% of the global capacity. But the Neom developers are about to deliver a sweet deal for the KSA and possibly the entire world. They're partnering with the UK-based Solar Water to develop the first ever solar dome to produce clean water out of the Red Sea. The exposed part of the dome is a glass semisphere extending 25 meters upward. This covers an equal-sized metal underground semisphere which is filled by seawater coming through a glass aqueduct. The dome's advanced thermal desalination method taps into concentrating solar power, or CSP. Basically, it's a large number of parabolic mirrors which will focus solar radiation onto the glass dome. The localized greenhouse effect will heat up the lower metallic kind of kettle containing the seawater, and the resulting steam will be pumped out through pipelines. After condensation, the fresh water will feed reservoirs and irrigation channels. And unlike the conventional reverse osmosis process, solar water said the waste brine collected at the bottom of the dome will be reused for different applications like lithium batteries, grit for roads, fertilizers, or detergents. According to their CEO, this 100% carbon neutral desalination plant is the future solution for accessing environmentally safe and sustainable fresh water. The leader of Neom's water sector said the dome will be able to generate 500,000 cubic meters of clean water per day and produce energy out of wastewater to close out the loop. But what about the cost? Well, recent studies said solar and energy storage technologies could drag down the global average levelized cost of desalinated water to around $1.20 per cubic meter by 2050. And the solar dome designers aim to water that down further to about 34 cents per cubic meter, which is obviously unsalted peanuts compared to the fossil fuel desalination plants. The first solar dome is currently being built and scheduled to be completed by the end of this year, and it's going to serve as a test bed for industrial applications worldwide, and something to absolutely keep an eye on.
Okay, so I just wanted you to see that there's other stuff going on, you know.
Yeah.
It's not all just who shot who and who went to bed with who and who owes who money. There's other energies going on around the planet, and that's driven by people who have ideas of new technology and new solutions. And a lot of it, that's a side of global climate change that isn't really covered that much, of like alternative solutions to some of the planetary problems. But anyhow, you saw it. There you go.
Yeah.
So that's the prince, the young prince. He's doing that. And so you saw it. That's all. I just wanted you to see that. Oh, who's put this up? Is that you?
I think that's
Alex?
Jim. I think that's Jim. No.
That's Jim.
Unless
Adul Abu Tahi.
Or is that the tribe? I think that is the tribe they mentioned.
The tribe that's getting.
Interesting. So he's now connected to Lawrence in the Arab Army.
Oh. Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, what do you think about that? I mean, it's an interesting thing. The displacement of small tribal communities to benefit an entire population.
Right.
Like when China built the Three Gorges Dam. Right or wrong
Well, that
about
wasn't a
it.
small population they displaced there.
I mean, size of populations really should be measured as a percentage. You can't say it's 50 people.
Right, and there's a whole argument that hydroelectric projects have not panned out the way
Right,
people
right.
hope.
That
Both in terms
that's
of the
right.
environmental impact, but also just in terms of power generation,
Yeah.
and they've caused a great deal of economic damage to global South countries who the IMF or World Bank talked into doing them.
Oh, really? In South America?
They wound up being very negative.
In South America or Africa?
All over. South America, Africa, Asia.
And that's a story I haven't heard because hydroelectric is a winner.
Israel's been involved
Why
in
you're doing it to compete with Israel?
Well,
Don't these people understand anything?
Well, anyway, she raised the point about Israel.
Get water in
Well,
Israel.
make your point, Gil. Anyway,
Get water from Israel, huh?
yeah, that's right. But the other thing about this is that if you put in the other aspect of what he's doing there, I mean, isn't this around the area where he wants to put in that? How much money did he spend for that? Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo?
600 million, was it? Something like that, right?
Salvador Mundi. He wants to basically put that someplace.
Oh no, yeah, he has. Yeah, there's this like pyramid structure that gets shown in that movie. Yeah, that's where he went in the middle of the desert, basically. And that's
right.
It's going to be a museum, and yeah, he was going to put it there.
That's the guy at Harvard who's doing the desalinization, not the father. There's two different guys, and the guy who went to Harvard is pretty progressive. I've forgotten his name, but my friend was his roommate.
Oh, roommate? Really?
They were, it's like in the 90s, maybe.
Well, anyway, that's an interesting story, Ken.
But I just want to say that Israelis get their water from desalinization. They've been doing it for 40 years or more. And so there's an element of competition in there as well, of course.
Sure.
Probably. I mean, what do I know?
That's true. In any event, you're muted, Ken.
The brine extract is detrimental because it's usually deposited in the ocean or the sea, and it changes the environment.
Yeah.
The salinity and so forth. So I never knew that, so that came up in this too. Right. But anyhow, desalinization, Israel does it, right?
Oh, yeah, fracking. Good point. Well, anyway, no, that's an interesting point. That's interesting.
Yeah. Does Mike
want to say something? Shall we call it?
He may be away, yeah.
Oh, Dennis is gone. Michael, your comments. Michael?
I think Mike's still on his other call.
All right, well, that's all right. He's off doing something theatrical as opposed to theatrically here. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, listen, it was really fun. And we had the December 7th edition of Going Viral.news. We were joined with Dennis Goldstein and Alex Stavropoulos, and Michael Jankowitz made a little appearance. We had Gail Aronow on for a short period of time. And, of course, we had Ken Aaron in California. So we want to thank everybody and stay tuned. Looking forward to hear your opinions and thoughts another time. Thank you so much.